I didn't bring a tissue. I usually bring a tissue because there's some tears that usually come with this story, but maybe I'll be good this time. I'm thinking maybe I might be good. We'll see. Sometimes I can get through it without it. So thank you, everybody, for being here, and thank you, Dr. Gold, for inviting me to speak. My journey started in 2020. I am an inpatient hospitalist by training and had been an inpatient hospitalist for about 15 years at the same hospital system that I had worked. And I had worked my way up from not just a clinician, but also in leadership. And through my exemplary service to my patients, I was asked to be in leadership. It wasn't something I ever saw myself being. And my chief medical officer at the time had come to me and said, "Deb, we want you to be the first non-physician to start to advocate for non-physicians in our hospital and give them more responsibility and more respect and things like that." So I ended up developing a program of leadership for our non-physicians, which included physician assistants, nurse practitioners, and CRNAs and that in the hospital. So I ultimately sat on the medical board, I sat on our medical executive board, and I helped develop policies in the hospital surrounding patient safety issues and things like that. So just a little bit of background with me. I'm from Buffalo, New York. My two beautiful sons are here with me today. I have a daughter and an amazing husband as well, who have been so supportive of me through this incredible journey that God has taken me down. So next slide. And how I came to know Dr. Gold is in 2020 when I was fired. She reached out to me and flew me to California, where I met these amazing people, and I have been with them ever since. So it's just, the whole story is incredible. So my talk is about my journey, but also educating the public about how you can become empowered to whistleblow or talk about things that are happening in your workplace or in your lives that you don't just aren't right. Because we all, as citizens, have to speak out for the injustices that are going on and are going on every day. So I was fired for reporting COVID vaccine adverse events under the emergency use authorization to the VAERS system, which is the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System. I was required to do this by law and by the COVID-19 Vaccine Program Participation Agreement, which we'll get into. And I whistle-blew on my organization on September 17th of 2021 on the Highwire show with Del Bigtree. He flew me out to Austin, Texas, and I disclosed what was going on to the world. Keeping in mind, prior to this, I'm a very quiet person. And it was, again, it's a God thing. I was subsequently, very shortly after that happened, and I also did a little piece for the New York Times, believe it or not. This was when the mandates were coming down. And they asked me why I wasn't getting the COVID vaccine. And I talked about all the side effects and the suppression of the reporting that was going on as the reason that I wasn't choosing to get vaccinated. So they found that very interesting. I was then walked out of my hospital and fired on October 6th, shortly 2 weeks after, without warning. I was surrounded that day by our HR department in the middle of my shift. I had been actively seeing patients on the floor. They surrounded me without warning and interrogated me and then literally threw me out of the hospital. Patients were abandoned that day because I was supposed to go back and see them for discharge and all of that, and they don't know what happened to me. Yeah, it was probably one of both the saddest, and I had so many emotions that day. I was sad, I was angry, I was bewildered, I was in shock, you know. But I look back now and I'm grateful. I'm so grateful because at that moment, I mean, I knew all along God was taking me on an incredible journey, but that moment in time was so incredible for me, and I'm so grateful for it and all the sacrifice that I've been through. Next slide. This is a link, and I've provided a lot of links in my PowerPoint. I think some of the attendees will get the PowerPoint presentations, and I hope you do, because I have a lot of links and information that you all can go to learn more about this. So this is the actual original interview that I did with Dell back in 2021 that is still on the internet and readily available, that you can learn more about the story and what it was like for me at that time and how difficult it was. Prior to me being fired, I had never had any complaints about me. I was so well respected in the hospital, I can't tell you, by both my patients and my peers. It was a real blow to my community to lose me. And they lost me in a big way because after I was terminated, you can't work anywhere, right? They terminate you, they ruin you by talking about you in the newspaper and calling you this crazy person, conspiracy theorist, so then no one wants to hire you. But there are people that believed in me and hired me, one of which is Dr. Gold. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to talk a little bit, I'm not gonna go really into this because our next speaker is one of my brilliant attorneys, and he will be going further into this. So next slide, we're gonna be talking about the false claim quickly. This is the America's first whistleblower law and one of the strongest whistleblower laws in the United States. It was originally, I'm not gonna get into this, you know what, I think this is the wrong, PowerPoint. Is there another one there in the documents? I apologize. There should be another one in the documents that was updated. Let's try going again, and I apologize. But yeah, I just wanted to bring a little bit of background into what the False Claims Act is, and so that the audience can understand kind of where I'm going with my story. That's the only one? Okay, fine, we'll wing it. I'm good. Keep going back and let's go back to that slide. That's okay. I usually wing these things anyway. Doing PowerPoints is a little weird for me. I can talk and talk. So we'll go back to that slide. So basically, I'll just leave it at that because Jeremy's going to go into more about the Civil War and Abraham Lincoln, but basically it's one of the strongest whistleblower laws in the United States. Next slide. We're going to keep going through this. We can leave this here. Oh, I'm sorry, go back to the 2 slides before. One more slide before. Yep, so the False Claims Act empowers citizens by allowing them to file lawsuits on behalf of the government against individuals or entities that are committing fraud, particularly in federal programs. And whistleblowers can receive a reward of 15 to 30% of the recovered funds, providing a strong incentive to report fraudulent activities. So this is very applicable to my journey, obviously, as a whistleblower, using the False Claims Act and my key TAM case to bring my allegations forward. So you can advance on to the next slide, and the next slide, we're not going over that. We're going to get into VAERS now. VAERS is the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System, and I thought it was important that the audience understands what VAERS is and what VAERS isn't. Next slide. So this is again, the definition has changed as this narrative has gone through. I've been very closely watching the internet and the CDC's website and the FDA's explanations for VAERS as we've moved through this time period between 2020 and now, because it keeps changing, and it keeps changing according to what the media's doing. It's quite interesting. So, but the original definition is that it is the nation's early warning system that monitors the safety of FDA-approved vaccines and vaccines authorized for use for public emergencies. So that's your emergency use authorization. VAERS system is for both approved and emergency use authorized products. It accepts and analyzes reports of possible adverse events after vaccination and is co-managed by the CDC and the FDA. And the number of reports submitted varies each year. And it accepts reports regardless of seriousness or how likely the vaccine caused the adverse event. Next slide. It was established in 1990. Anyone can report adverse events to VAERS. That is true. However, healthcare professionals, like myself, are required to report certain adverse events, and vaccine manufacturers are required to report all adverse events that come to their attention. Next slide. We won't go too much through this, but it's important to know that just because a VAERS report is filed does not mean that the vaccine caused the event. What we are reporting are observations. Oftentimes it's the patients, like in my instance, the patient got a vaccine at a local pharmacy, the ambulance picked them up, they came to our ER, I saw them in the ER to admit them to the hospital. The patient told me I did nothing different other than get this new injection in my arm. And now I have a stroke, or now I had a heart attack, or my heart's failing, or I passed out, or various things. I was found on the floor. And so they're like, that's the only thing I did different. So the patients often told me that they were vaccine injured or that they had an adverse event. So that's how I knew that something was wrong and that I needed to report these. But they love to stress that it doesn't mean the vaccine caused the event, and I agree. My job is not to determine that. Somebody's job somewhere in the CDC, it's their job to determine if the vaccine caused the event. And they should be doing that by looking at appropriate records and talking to the providers that were involved in the event and the patient. So in all of this is, again, new information that's on the various websites where they love to downplay that most VAERS reports involve mild side effects. I think that's BS because it takes you about an hour of your time to do one VAERS report. I don't think many doctors out there have an hour, and I don't think in that hour that they're going to report a VAERS report, they're going to do it because somebody has a sore arm, right? It's just not. These are going to be events that are serious. These are events that are just catastrophic that happen to these patients. At least in my experience, that's what I did. I'm not saying I didn't report. I was in the hospital, so if somebody had a sore arm that blew up and caused them to be admitted or come to the ER, I was reporting that. But I'm talking about the doctors that are in the offices who are seeing a patient every 15 minutes. They don't have time to report a sore arm because we're told that's normal. The adverse events that are required by healthcare workers, especially when these vaccines were under the emergency use, were serious adverse events. And those include permanent disability, hospitalization, the extension of a hospitalization, life-threatening illness, birth defect or a deformity, which is applicable to the COVID vaccines because these mothers were getting injected while they were pregnant, and then they were having babies that were born with congenital birth defects. So those have to be reported to VAERS. That is a serious event. There's a little nuance to that, but it can be done. Death, we can move forward on this slide. Let's see. Okay, we can move forward on this slide. I just want to make sure we can move forward. We won't get into all of that. This is a really busy slide. This is good. But one other thing to keep in mind, the serious adverse events is that, they kind of keep expanding as time goes on. I mean, pericarditis, myocarditis was always on the VAERS website as required serious reporting, as was death and things like that. But the key is hospitalization, and people are like, okay, I could see, again, you're at a Walgreens and you get hospitalized because you pass out at the Walgreens and you come to the ER. I could see how that could be reported. But it's any hospitalization, right? Because we had no long-term safety studies for these vaccines in the early, when they came out. So I'm talking even about people that got a COVID vaccine and then 2 months later are in the hospital with multi-organ failure or some weird pneumonia or RSV that kills them or all sorts of weird things that go on, or a cancer. That is a hospitalization after a vaccination. That's reportable. People never think that they think, oh, it's within the first 48 hours. No, what if that's the only thing they did from the time that they got the vaccine till they got their turbo cancer, right? I mean, that's reportable. These are observational things. The patient will tell you, I have not felt right since I got this COVID vaccine. They tell you that the adverse event needs to be reported. So the VAERS does have several limitations. It's a passive system, meaning we're not held to this required reporting. Nobody's educating us in the hospital, and that's part of my story. Nobody's holding your arm. There's no protocols in place to force doctors or PAs or nurses to report these things. And the public has no idea what VAERS is. I'm sure if any of you in the audience or on listening online received a COVID vaccine, I'm sure VAERS was not something that was told to you or that you maybe even know about, right? So the passive reporting, I think, is because we're not educated, to be honest with you. These reports are voluntary. The data can include incomplete, inaccurate, or coincidental information. Reports do not establish a cause and effect between vaccines and adverse event. And yes, the data can include incomplete data because they require so much information that maybe a patient reporting for themselves or their family member don't have at the time, like lot number, dates, all sorts of things. For a healthcare provider, in order for us to do an accurate report, we need the lot number, the date, all their medical history, the story. I mean, it's a really involved process. And then the CDC will, and on anything that's reported as serious, the CDC will call you, at least they did me, on every serious adverse event that was reported. And they want medical records and all sorts of things. So it was just such an unbelievably full-time job for me as a reporter of this. And mind you, my health system knew that I was doing this initially because I advocated for the patients I was seeing that were having these adverse events in the hospital. And we had no system in place about reporting, nor did we have any knowledge. So I took it upon myself to become the vaccine adverse event reporter for my health system. I was the only one because it was the right thing to do. Safety first, my oath to do no harm is first and foremost when I see my patients. It's always been that way. I challenge anyone that knows me to say anything different because before COVID it was the same way, which is again why I was chosen to be in leadership. So reporting these adverse events is something that I took very seriously, and I notified my health system I was going to do it, and they let me initially. It wasn't until I really started trying to educate my healthcare colleagues and the system level that it started to get ugly, and then they started suppressing the reporting, the education. They started threatening me, pulling me into these meetings all the time and whatnot, and trying to tell me, oh, you shouldn't be reporting and you need to toe the company line and all sorts of things. And you're creating vaccine hesitancy and we're going to report you to the state to get your license removed and all sorts of things. But I didn't care. I don't care because I don't do this for a living because I'm out to be an unethical healthcare worker. I care about my reputation and I care about my patients and I care about doing the right thing. So threaten me all you want. I don't care. So, and I mean, and people say, well, weren't you afraid of losing your job? And I said, well, if I lose my job over this, they don't deserve me, right? They don't deserve me. I'm not gonna work for an unethical organization that's gonna force me to harm patients. I'm just not gonna do it. I'm just not. It came so clear to me. Next slide. So this is just some of the objectives of VAERS. Again, you can read all of this. I think you guys have a pretty good understanding of what VAERS is, yes? Okay, let's move along. And okay, this is quick. There's some differences, which is quite interesting, in reporting adverse events for the COVID vaccines that are under EUA and those that are approved. So under emergency use, the serious safety reports are required by healthcare workers. They're required to do. Once these vaccines became approved, it's no longer a requirement, it's suggested, which is quite interesting. And you can read about that. Next slide. Let's see, what did I put here? Again, next slide, we'll move along here because in the essence of time, we already went through this. Interestingly, on May 8th, I just wanted to bring this out. The CDC and the FDA have expanded public access in the Wonder database, which is where the public can actually go in and see these reports for themselves. It was very limited prior to May, but they want more transparency to the public, so they added this more recently. You can go to the next slide. This is Open VAERS. This is a nice website that analyzes in real time where we're at in VAERS with the COVID vaccines. Currently, we have 2,682,925 adverse events reported for the COVID vaccines in the VAERS system. We have 38,773 deaths and 221,257 hospitalizations. Keep in mind that the Harvard Health Study, when that was done, their conclusion was less than 1% of adverse events to vaccines get reported to VAERS. So think about what these numbers really look like, okay? Next slide, please. And again, this is a timeline of when the VAERS came out in 1990 and who was reporting to VAERS for all vaccines, not just the COVID vaccines. And we get to 2021 and it's off the charts, right? Is that a signal? But where it's not a signal, they're telling us, we don't know what that, it's over-reporting. It's over-reporting. Next slide, please. So this is the key to our key TAM case, which again, Jeremy will be talking about shortly. Next slide, please. Quickly, the COVID-19 program participation agreement. This is a great story. I don't have time to get into it, but my lead attorney, Warner Mendenhall, who I absolutely love and adore because he believes in me and believes in this case that we're bringing. So does Jeremy, and I will thank all my attorneys. But basically, this agreement, so there was an agreement signed with the CDC and the FDA and all organizations that gave out the COVID vaccines under the emergency use back in 2021. Under this agreement, next slide, please. Under this agreement, basically the organization, under provision number 10, they must report adverse events to the COVID vaccines that are serious in nature, as we defined, and not doing this as part of this agreement is a material. It's a material condition of payment, and it's basically material, which again Jeremy will get into, and that's the key to our lawsuit, is that they billed for these vaccines. They billed that $40. For every vaccine they gave, but they didn't adhere to their agreement with the CDC and the FDA that they were going to report the adverse events that came. And they suppressed the person that was speaking out and trying to educate my staff, my colleagues, my community. Next slide, please. We're almost done. This is a little bit more about the agreement. Next slide. And again, this goes into the actual agreement. The above requirements are material conditions of payment for the COVID vaccine administration claims submitted by the organization. And it talks about the program, if the organization fails to comply with these requirements with respect to the administered COVID vaccine dose. And each time the organization submits a reimbursement claim for COVID vaccine administration to any federal healthcare benefit program, the organization expressly certifies that it has complied with these requirements with respect to that administered dose. Non-compliance will result in suspension or termination from the COVID vaccine program and criminal and civil penalties under federal law, including but not limited to the False Claims Act. So that is the basis of our lawsuit. They suppressed me. They did not allow me to report these adverse events as I was legally and medically required and ethically required to do. They stopped me, and as a result, we are the first case in history to try to hold an organization accountable for this. Next slide, please. So I'm almost done, I promise. I just want to speak of the power of one. My pastor at my church last weekend, it's like he spoke to me, I swear, because I pray about talking about these events, and it's very anxiety, it's a lot of anxiety. And he talked about the power of one. So I hope my story reminds all of you, how one person's actions can create ripples of change that affect many. Each of us has the potential to make a difference, inspire others, and fulfill God's purpose in the world. By pursuing righteousness and standing up for truth, we too can influence those around us. Let's remind ourselves that no matter how small we may feel, our efforts can lead to monumental changes. Next slide. Please stay updated with us as we go along on our journey. This is my website. We try to keep it updated on how the legal process is going along for us. There's also a donate button, of course, because funding lawsuits are terribly expensive, and I'm bringing this case out by myself for the citizens of the United States. I am representing the United States of American citizens. We are taxpayers. This money was frauded to our government. Next slide. These are some references, and I encourage you to look at them. There's all sorts of things from my attorney's wonderful firm to the Freedom Council, and some other references that would benefit you to look at. Next slide. I think that's probably it. But I just want to take a moment to thank my amazing attorney team, again, one of which, Jeremy Friedman, will be up just next. He is the most amazing man and has followed me through this journey, along with Warner Mendenhall. There's Aaron Seary, Elizabeth Brem, and Scott Piotrowski that have joined the team in this fight for justice against Rochester Regional Health. So I thank you so much, again, Dr. Gold, for having me speak, and I thank you for listening. And it's just been an incredible journey, and I thank God for allowing me and choosing me for this journey. Thank you so much.